Hey guys, Blarg here from Zach. We want Monsters and Memories to succeed. Seriously. As a guild, we've spent thousands of hours dissecting MMOs, especially PvP ones. We've seen what builds strong communities and what slowly empties them out. So when people ask us whether they should give Monsters and Memories a try, we take that question seriously. And here's the truth. There's a lot to love. But some of the very things that people praise, the brutality, friction, and the old school commitment, are also the things that make us nervous about its long-term population. And with the current direction and the dev's stated vision, this may not be a game for a lot of players, and that worries us. Before we get into specifics, we need to define vision. And by vision, I don't mean a roadmap or marketing. I mean the philosophy that determines what kind of world you're building and what kind of players you're building it for. When I think about developer vision, I think about Chris Wilson and Path of Exile. Path of Exile is unapologetically complex. Massive skill trees, punishing mechanics, harsh balance shifts, and when the backlash comes, and it does, the response has consistently been, yes, this is the game we're making. That clarity matters, because without vision, a live service game becomes reactive. They chase comfort, and they sand down friction, and eventually, they sand down their own identity. Now, here's the hard part. Vision can protect a game, but it can also overcorrect it. So what exactly is Monsters and Memories' vision? As we understand it, it's this. It's a dangerous, social-first MMO where the world doesn't revolve around the player. Where travel matters, where death matters, where leveling is slow enough to feel earned, where friction forces cooperation. That's a coherent vision. It knows exactly what it wants to be. But the question isn't whether it makes sense. The question is whether it's calibrated for 2026. And that's where EverQuest becomes important. Monsters and Memories is positioning itself as a spiritual successor to EverQuest. And EverQuest was punishing. Corpse runs, long travel, real risk. The friction created unforgettable memories and largely fuels the nostalgia that makes games like this one possible. But here's the key. EverQuest wasn't punishing for the sake of punishment. Some of its friction was intentional, but some of it was just technological limitation and some of it was just the era it was made in. And when we try to recreate 1999, we risk recreating the pain without the novelty. In 1999, friction was a discovery because we didn't know anything else. In 2026, friction is comparison. We know exactly what other games feel like, and we judge this one against them. And when punishment escalates beyond even EverQuest, when you have harsher recovery, more downtime, onboarding that feels opaque instead of mysterious, you're no longer just protecting vision, you're narrowing your audience, and MMOs don't survive on narrow audiences. Path of Exile can afford its complexity. It's free to play, it lives in a genre where depth attracts theory crafters. You don't need to master every system to progress. An indie MMO is different. It doesn't just need loyalty, it needs growth. Vision is essential, but vision without calibration leads to isolation. And MMOs can't survive on isolation. If only hardened EverQuest veterans can tolerate the experience, the game risks becoming nostalgia bait instead of a living world. And nostalgia alone does not sustain population. So, the real tension for Monsters and Memories is this. Does its vision for a brutal old-school MMO leave enough oxygen for new players to breathe? Now, to be fair, there's a real argument on the other side. Some players would say friction is exactly what makes this game special. That filtering the audience creates a stronger community, and that inconvenience forces cooperation. And I respect that. The question isn't whether friction has value. The real question is how much friction can an MMO sustain and still grow? Now let's talk some specifics. XP in Monsters and Memories is slow, glacial. EverQuest was too, but this feels harsher. Maybe it isn't numerically lower, it's been 26 years so my memory is a little fuzzy. But I know this, we don't have the same amount of free time that we did when we were teenagers. And most of you watching these videos definitely aren't 16. Defenders say slow leveling makes progress more meaningful, and I get that, but here's the question. Meaningful to who? To the majority? Part of why we could grind mobs for hours in 1999 was because it was new, it was discovery. Now, people want to see what makes this MMO different. They want to experience the dungeons and the raids and the whole world. Not 200 green beetles followed by 200 slightly angrier green beetles. Raising XP gains early, especially levels 1 to 15, won't kill the vision, but it might save the onboarding. Corpse runs are iconic. We don't want them removed. They add risk, they make deep dungeon dives intense, but full naked long corpse runs plus long recovery timers for lost corpses? That's heavy. The corpse summoner after 2 hours helps, if it even stays in the game, but 2 hours is a steep penalty. Lower the timer, at least for lower levels. Death should hurt, and it does. You lose experience, you waste your time, but it shouldn't make you feel like you should just log off for the night to avoid the friction. There's no in-game map at all. Some people love that, but most people just Google one. In 1999, finding a map meant having a community. In 2026, it means Alt-Tab. A simple, minimal map wouldn't destroy immersion. No markers for your party or even for yourself, just a simple zone layout. It would reduce unnecessary friction, because there's a difference between mystery and inconvenience. The Monsters and Memories aesthetic is aggressively old school, and some love it, but let's be honest, blocky models and brown palettes are not attracting a new generation of players. It doesn't kill gameplay, but it absolutely affects first impressions. And then there's all the little things, the death by 1,000 cuts, dropping your spellbook on death, hyper-limited bag space, selling to specific merchants only, food and water draining too fast, PvP loot rules more aggressive than almost any we've ever seen. At some point, it stops feeling immersive and it starts feeling like friction layered for its own sake. And that's crossing a line that concerns us. This one really matters. We understand the 30% cut of the revenue, but MMOs need population. An MMO with 800 players feels alive, but an MMO with 200 feels fragile. Skipping Steam narrows exposure dramatically. Advertising helps and word of mouth helps, but those mostly reach the already converted, and that's a recurring theme here. Look, we're not asking for easy mode. We're asking for sustainable mode. We don't want retail WoW, we don't want Dungeon Finder, we definitely don't want glowing arrows holding our hands the whole time. But we also don't want the door to be so narrow that only hardcore EQ veterans can fit through it. Because brutal is good, but brutal without growth is fragile. We don't need another nostalgia museum. We want a living world, one where we play with old friends and meet new ones, where PvP battles are massive and raids feel earned, where population supports that ecosystem. And that only happens with oxygen. So devs, if you're listening, keep your vision, just leave a little oxygen in the room. Let us know down in the comments if you agree or if you think we're just being doomers. And if you enjoyed the video or at least found it a little bit interesting, consider liking, maybe subscribe if you want to see more like this. And definitely check out our other Monsters and Memories videos that are a little more tips, tricks, and progression focused. Anyhow, that's all from us this time. We'll see you in the next one.